For more on the impact of climate change on food security, I'm joined by Jay Famiglietti. He is a hydrologist and also a Earth Systems Science and Civil Environmental Engineering professor at the University of California at Irvine. Welcome to the show, Professor. Let me first get your reaction on this hybrid salmon. What do you think?
Well, I'm actually okay with it. I think to have it both ways. I mean, we have a tremendous challenge ahead of us with climate change and water insecurity, and that will lead to great challenges to produce food. So, yeah, we need more study, but I, at this point, am not opposed to it.
Okay. The impact on the climate on food for us layman folks out there, explain to us why we should be concerned with this.
Well, a lot of it comes back to water and the availability of water. As climate changes, we're seeing the dry areas of the world getting drier. Those are the places where we have our great aquifer systems, and those also coincide with our great food-producing regions, whether we're talking about the Central Valley in California or the High Plains aquifer or the Warrene aquifer in South America or the North China Plain in China. These places are running out of water. Of course, if we run out of water, producing food for a rapidly growing population is going to be increasingly difficult.
So we need water for the crops. We need the crops because we need the food. There's been a lot of talk of different technologies to help combat this, and maybe you can help us with that. What are they talking about?
Well, there's lots of different things. I work at NASA now, and we have tremendous capabilities to monitor plant stress, to monitor the moisture in the soil, to track precipitation, to monitor groundwater and groundwater depletion. So there's great advances that are being made there that will help us optimally irrigate and feed our agricultural regions.
Let me talk about some of the other solutions. Genetically modified plants, or I should say crops that use less water. I mean, would that be a realistic solution?
I think that's an incredibly realistic solution. When you think about it, we've been doing that by careful crossbreeding over several generations. So this just speeds up the process. It'll probably be more acceptable to the general population.
This, we've had such a great debate here, I mean, not just in America, but also in the newsroom as well, and really around the world about the genetically modified animals. I mean, we talked about salmon, but really we're talking about potentially beef and every other type of moving animal out there that us humans ultimately eat. Are we as consumers really okay with it?
Probably not. I personally am quite uncomfortable with the idea of cloned cows. The reality is, as we think about our changing climate and the COP21 meeting that's going on right now, we probably need to be thinking about modifying our diet. And beef is a prime candidate. It is so water intensive. Plus, there's all the methane emissions that are very powerful greenhouse gas. So that's maybe an easier way for us to go.
I mean, I think that's an easy thing to say, that we're going to eat less beef, but the reality is I don't think we're going to convince enough people to actually do that. So the bottom line is, where do we draw the line from genetically modified plants, salmon, for example, to we're talking about beef? Where's the line going to be drawn, and should governments take a stronger stance?
Well, I think an easy line is probably to draw it between plants and animals. Again, I think that the genetically modified plants are just a much easier thing to accept, and we have been doing it through crossbreeding for generations. Should governments play a stronger role? Well, absolutely, especially in terms of testing and understanding what the long-term impacts can be. And then if there's a stamp of approval based on research, then that may make people feel more comfortable.
They often talk about climate change and how it impacts developing countries more than developed countries, and I have my own opinions about this, but I'm curious from your perspective, who does it really hurt more? And if it does hurt developing countries, is there something that developed countries, like the U.S., for example, can do to help them?
Well, there's a few. So absolutely, the developing countries are being disproportionately impacted by climate change. It's much more difficult for a developing nation to respond to these rapid changes or to some of the severe events that are resulting from climate change. So there's a couple of roles, of course, the U.S. and other developed countries can contribute financially, but also we've made a tremendous number of mistakes through the years in terms of our development and unintended environmental consequences. And so sharing that information with the developing world, I think, is a very important role that we can play.
Yeah. Jay, good to see you. Thank you for helping us out on this topic. Certainly a very controversial one.